What's the most dangerous thing a teacher ever said to your child? My 12-year-old diabetic son was shaking and stumbling during PE when his blood sugar crashed, but his teacher told him to stop being dramatic and finish running laps. I'd warned her about this exact situation when school started. I showed her his medical papers that said low blood sugar could kill him. She rolled her eyes and said parents nowadays claim their kids have everything. She pushed the papers aside without reading them, bragging she'd taught 20 years and knew real emergencies from fake ones. I was in a work meeting when my son texted, "Help, dizzy, teacher won't let me sit." My heart started pounding. He'd hidden his phone for emergencies, which meant this was bad. I called the school immediately. The secretary said she'd check. 5 minutes passed. Nothing. 10 minutes. Still nothing. I called back and she casually said the PE teacher reported he was participating normally. I told her my son was literally asking for help, but she kept saying the teacher was in charge. I ran out of work and started driving. Another text came. "Can't see straight. She says I'm faking." I was going 20 over the speed limit. Those 15 minutes felt like hours. I ran through the school entrance and found the PE field. What I saw made me sick. My son was stumbling around, trying to do jumping jacks while kids backed away from him looking terrified. His face wasn't just pale, it was gray. The teacher yelled at me from across the field, but I was already running. My son couldn't even focus his eyes on me. His whole body was shaking. I fumbled for his glucose tablets while the teacher marched over saying he was fine, that I was teaching him to be weak. Then he collapsed. His knees just gave out. A girl started sobbing and said he'd begged for the nurse 3 times, but the teacher kept saying no. Another kid yelled that his monitor had been alarming for 20 minutes straight. I shoved tablets in his mouth, but his eyes were rolling back. I screamed for 911 while holding my unconscious son. Paramedics rushed over and immediately tested his blood sugar. 32. "We need to transport now," one shouted, making everyone jump. The teacher actually followed us, arguing his monitor was clearly broken since he'd been running earlier. The paramedic spun around. "Lady, 32 means this kid is minutes from seizures, coma, or death. What's wrong with you?" They struggled to get an IV in because his veins were collapsing. My barely conscious son couldn't even speak. When they heard he'd been like this for over 30 minutes, the paramedic said bluntly, "You saved his life by coming when you did." The ER doctor looked horrified when I explained everything. His blood sugar hit 28. Another few minutes and he would have seized. Then brain damage. Then death. He stared at me. In that order. The doctor wrote criminal negligence in his report while nurses pumped emergency dextrose into my son. I watched the heart monitor all night, terrified it would stop, thinking how close we'd come. 3 days later, I walked into the principal's office ready for war. The district superintendent was there. So was the teacher, already making excuses about kids faking illness to skip exercise. I slammed down the hospital report showing his blood sugar at 28, nearly fatal. She actually said, "I'm not a nurse. How am I supposed to know?" Perfect. I pulled out his medical plan she'd ignored, the one stating in bold letters, "Low blood sugar is a medical emergency." The superintendent was reading the paramedic's report. His hands were actually trembling. "Multiple students saw him beg for help?" he asked. The teacher claimed kids exaggerate everything. That's when I laid out 8 written statements from his classmates, one by one, each describing my son begging, crying, pleading for the nurse while she refused. The superintendent stood up. "You're suspended immediately pending investigation." She exploded, asking if maintaining discipline was now a crime. I leaned across the table. "You almost killed my child. I'm pressing criminal charges and calling every news station in the state." Her face went white. She whispered she didn't know it was serious. "That's exactly why you don't get to decide who's really sick," I said. "Your ignorance almost murdered my son." 6 months later, she permanently lost her teaching license. The investigation found 3 other diabetic students she'd endangered. The district implemented mandatory medical emergency training after 2 families joined my lawsuit. My son never returned to that school.